Okay, welcome everybody. Oh, hold on. Tweet this out. Okay, welcome back everybody to another episode of The Sideline. My name is Rishioza. Just gonna be me today. And yeah, let's get into it. It's just gonna be I'll try and make this a quick video. But as you can see, the title of the video, Nuggets post trade deadline and the Super Bowl review. Super Bowl happened yesterday. I'm gonna go into the Nuggets a little bit because it's been a while since I've talked about them. It's been a while since I made a video, honestly. Last week was super busy for both of us, Asher and I. We didn't even make a Super Bowl prediction video, which is really bad on us. But we'll talk about I'll talk about Nuggets post trade deadline because there was a lot of action that happened on that, and I wasn't able to make a video on that, and then some Super Bowl stuff because we didn't really talk about it at all outside of just a slight preview. So let's start with the Nuggets. They beat Miami today. I honestly thought it was a good win. They fought back. Miami was on fire in the first quarter. They were able to fight back. And you could really tell about the trade deadline acquisition and Thomas Bryant. You could really tell his impact early on in this game. And I think that that's going to be a huge key for Denver moving forward, is being able to integrate him and make him a key feature of the offense going forward and going into the stretch run of the season, because he's going to be very important. Michael Porter Jr. had a bounce back game. Jokic had a good game. Everyone had a good game, really. Jeff Green was good in the first half, iffy in the second half, but Ish Smith didn't have a good game. He was probably the only guy who actually was kind of buns. But once again, I'll get into that later. That's why it's not that big of a deal, because of some other guy. But if you want to talk about just a trade deadline, you take it as a whole, counting buyout market, you can look at it as Denver essentially trading Bones Hyland, Davon Reed, and a second-round pick for Reggie Jackson and Thomas Bryant, which to me that's a pretty good deal. Like, that's a really, really good deal. When Reggie Jackson is going to join the team, I don't know, but I'd probably post All-Star break, or maybe even for their next game on Wednesday against Dallas. But it's just, whenever that happens is when it happens. But that is huge for them to get an actual point guard. I know he's more of a score first point guard, but he's an actual point guard who can run, he can run an actual offense. He can run pick and roll. He can shoot. He can look to create for himself, which is something that bench unit desperately needs. And with Thomas Bryant, it showed today. He's able to stretch the floor. He's shooting great from three. He has the highest true shooting percentage in the NBA right now, at like 66% in terms of like volume. Or no, he's shooting 66% from the field. His true shooting percentage is over 70%, which is really, really good. And you can I think that he's going to be huge for the Denver Nuggets because of his ability to just finish around the rim without having to be spoon fed. I think that is something that Denver has desperately needed this season. As much as I love Zeke Nnaji, as much as the Nuggets fan base loves Zeke Nnaji, that's his one flaw, is that he can't create for himself. And he's a great rebounder and he's phenomenal defensively with his versatility. But the one thing that you really do need from him at this point is scoring, and he just doesn't really bring that. And what Thomas Bryant does bring is scoring. That's his best trait. And I think Denver has the defense with that bench lineup to reasonably make his defense not that bad. I thought he was fine today, honestly, defensively. Like, he's not that big, so his rim deterrence isn't that good, but I thought he contested well. He used his fouls at the right moments. He had some good possessions on Bam, honestly, I thought. But his ability to finish around the rim and score without having to be spoon-fed is going to be huge. And the only other actual center on the roster is DeAndre Jordan. That's the only thing he can do. He can only catch lobs and finish right at the rim. Thomas Bryant can space the floor a little bit. He can score on pick and roll, pick and pop, short short roll. He's got really, really good touch at the rim. He had 10 points on 4 or 5 shooting today. Really, really good minutes to help keep the bench afloat. He had some big plays in the fourth quarter when Denver was the bench was letting go of the rope a little bit. He hit a jumper to kind of quiet down the run and calm everyone down. But he's good. He's really, really good. And I really do think that addition, him and Reggie Jackson off the bench, is going to be so big for the Nuggets. Reggie Jackson probably won't play that much, and he hasn't been great this season. I will say that largely because of that is because he's had a huge role in a Clippers team that doesn't really have defined roles for teams. Like Reggie Jackson sometimes is a backup point guard, sometimes he doesn't play, sometimes he's a starter, sometimes he has to be the first option, sometimes he's the fourth option. Like it's hard to find a rhythm and find a role like that. And last season, the reason why he was so good last season is because he did have a role. He was the guy to score. Paul George and Kawhi Leonard didn't play that much last season, and he was asked to be the number one option a lot of the time. And that helped a lot. That he played really good, averaged 17 points a game. So I think as long as he's able to come to Denver, not be like a complete traffic cone on defense, which I know that he isn't good on defense, but if he can just be like slightly below average, that's more than enough, because Denver has the other defenders to be able to help him, especially with that second unit with Bruce Brown, Vlatko. If you need Zeke, you can play him with Christian Brown, who should be, cemented in the rotation at this point. They have enough to keep everything afloat. Which is why I don't think Thomas Bryant and Reggie Jackson defensively are going to be that bad, because they have the personnel around them to make it better. But as long as Reggie Jackson's able to just keep his mistakes to a minimum and make sure he is not a complete traffic cone on defense, I think this is a great addition for Denver, because I think we in that Orlando game was really, really apparent. Jamal hasn't played in the last 4 or 5 games. And it's kind of showing like, hey, Denver needs a creator out there, especially without Bones Highland now. He was a creator, like as much as he has struggled over the past few weeks, as much as he struggled with Denver, he was a creator, and he did put pressure on the defense. If regardless of if it was, bad shots or whatever, he would make those bad shots regularly. And that put pressure on the defense. He was a good driver. He had a really good first quick step. That put pressure on the defense, and they were focused on someone scoring. Without him or Jamal Murray, that Orlando game was tough to watch, because there was just no one. They weren't concerned about anybody else, and it just put way too much pressure on Jokic to score the ball and make plays for everybody else. So I thought that I think getting Reggie Jackson, excuse me, I think getting Reggie Jackson back is big. I think getting him and putting a lot less pressure on Jamal Murray. I don't think that they'll stagger. I think hopefully this means that they're not going to stagger Jamal a lot, because he was staggering and now he's injured. They've been keeping him out just for precautionary reasons. He's not going to play in their next game against Dallas. At least I would be very surprised if he does. I would put money on it that he's going to be out throughout the All-Star break, which is good, because he's going to get like 3 weeks off in the middle of the season to help calm his knee down, which is fine. And I think that hopefully with Reggie Jackson, you have a guy who you're comfortable running the bench with just and staggering Kentavious Caldwell-Pope with the bench, which is what they've been doing over the past few games. Or even just running Bruce Brown with that second unit and having him be the secondary creator. Because I think a bench lineup with Reggie Jackson, Bruce Brown, Christian Brown, Vlatko Cancar, and Thomas Bryant, I think that's a pretty good bench unit. I think that's a very, very capable bench unit, and one that you can run without staggering a starter. And I know over the past couple of seasons, Denver has been forced to stagger someone with the bench, but that was because they just didn't have a good bench. They didn't have players who were good enough to keep the lead afloat now. But I think with Bruce Brown coming off the bench in a more limited role, with Reggie Jackson coming off the bench as a creator, and with Thomas Bryant, and Vlatko and Chris, that's enough, I think, to where you can run a 10-man rotation with those 5 guys off the bench. But I don't know how Malone's going to do it. Normally he's pretty adamant on the 5-man rotation, but with Jamal back, he likes to stagger. So we'll see what happens. Hopefully they give the 5-man bench a chance. I think that has a chance to succeed, and it will take a lot less strain off your starters, because KCP's been playing a ton of minutes lately. And he's been good. He's been great defensively, but I think it's showing because his jumper hasn't been as lethal as it was over the first 3 months of the season. But I think Thomas Bryant is going to be a huge addition. I love the Reggie Jackson signing. I love what Christian Braun's been able to do. I think Vlatko Čančar should be cemented as a backup for. He's been great. The fact that Jeff Green was getting minutes over him in the first place was mind-boggling to me. But Vlatko with his floor spacing, he's been great defensively. Him and Jokic work phenomenal together. When he's in the starting lineup, they have the best chemistry on the floor out there. It's incredible. He's a good finisher at the rim. He's a good driver, good ball handler. As like a tertiary creator, you can more than rely on him, especially if Jokic is the one setting the ball screen, because they can read each other's minds somehow. The Balkan connection is just undefeated. So I really, really like that. I love Vlatko. I think Christian Braun has been great. So I think Nuggets post trade deadline, this is the team. This is the 15 guys you got on the roster for right now. So I hope that they're able to figure out some sort of continuity with that rotation. And I hope Reggie Jackson's a part of it, because he actually really does help. And I think you can tell with Ish Smith, it's just not enough. This level of creation without Jamal Murray is just not enough. And you need someone there to kind of buoy those bench minutes. And I think Reggie Jackson's a guy who can do it. And he's a Colorado guy. He's coming back to Colorado. So there's that connection. I've been wanting Reggie Jackson in a Nuggets uniform for a long time. So the fact that it's actually happening is pretty cool. I was very happy on, what was it, Saturday night when they announced it. Pretty happy about that signing. But yeah, man, Thomas Bryant too. He's good. He's really, really good. He brings a lot of energy. He's a good finisher at the rim. And like I said, it's the fact that you don't have to spoon feed someone right at the rim is so huge for Denver, because he can actually he has some legitimate post moves. He has good touch. He doesn't have to dunk everything at the rim. Zeke, I think he still struggles with it, but going up strong, he's not the greatest at it. He always wants to lay it in instead of just dunking it. Thomas Bryant actually has the touch and the ability to lay it in instead of dunking it. And DeAndre Jordan, obviously, for his entire career, he never really had great touch at the rim. It was always just slamming the ball through. But now you have somebody who adds a different element, and you have to guard out there, and it helps the spacing so much more, because Zeke, this year from the three was so bad, but Thomas Bryant's shooting 45% from three this year. You can't just leave him wide open. He's gonna make you pay. And as a starter too with LA, when Anthony Davis went down as a starter when he was with the Lakers, he was great. He was averaging like 17 and 10, shot his efficiency was even better actually. He was shooting like 67% from the field, 47% from three. He's a good free throw shooter too. That's also huge. Zeke Naji's not the greatest free throw shooter. He's been better this season, but he's not the greatest free throw shooter. We obviously know DeAndre Jordan isn't a good free throw shooter either. So having a guy there who you can't just he's at the rim, I got a mismatch, I'll just hack down or grab him, force him to make it run at the line. No, he'll make 2 free throws. So yeah, I love that addition. I think he's going to be great. I don't think his defense is going to be as much of an issue as before, or as it's been in LA, because I think Denver has better defenders with that bench line, especially when healthy, with Bruce Brown on the bench. I think him, Christian, and Vlatko are more than enough defensively for that. It's only a couple days until their last game, which is versus Dallas. Oh my God, come on. Put a bet on Dallas to win this game. Doesn't look like that's going to happen. But they play, I think, Wednesday. Yeah, a Wednesday game. Not sure why that's not an ESPN game, but no, it's because they have to put the Lakers on ESPN. Well, at least it's a 7 p.m. tip. This is going to be a good test for Denver. I think this is going to be the first fully healthy revamped team that they're going to play. Miami was missing a couple of guys tonight. Hero, Lowry, Duncan Robinson was out. They had to play a guy. I had never even heard of this guy, Jamare Bouye. I'd never heard of him. He played a really good game actually, but I never heard of him, and he outplayed Ish Smith. But I think with Denver going against an actual team that's competitive and has all their guys healthy, in Dallas, I think that'll be a good test going into the All-Star break, because they haven't really played that many fully healthy teams as of late. They had a good stretch there in early January where they were playing a lot of contenders and winning them, but lately it hasn't happened. I hope so. Hopefully this next game will be a bit of a shot in the arm to them in case they don't get complacent. Yeah, I think that's gonna be it for this. I'll make a video just on trade deadline stuff later. Maybe I think it might be too far past to make it. I don't know if it'll do good, but I'll see. But this was a good. I mean, this was a good trade deadline for Denver. I thought that, especially with all the reports that were coming out about Bones, I thought if they didn't get Reggie Jackson or any sort of point guard on the buyout market, I thought it would have been a little tough. Like that would have been tough to swallow, just getting him back for no rotation players. But essentially, you're trading him for Reggie Jackson, so I think that's a good that's a good move. And with the reports that were coming out, excuse me, with the reports that were coming out, with Jamal Murray might have been pretty frustrated with him. The fact that him and the coaching staff were not really happy. His attitude when he got benched wasn't great. It looked like it was just at a point of no return for him. So I understand you had to let him go. Sucks. It sucks that it's ending this way too, with all the reports that are coming out. It's really, really not a good. It's not a good environment to be around. But it is what it is, and I think Denver's going to be better off for it. Because I think this roster is going to be better fit. So yeah, good trade deadline for Denver, and I'm excited to see how for this stretch run how they look. Super Bowl now, I guess. Like I said, it's going to be a pretty short video. I spoke for like 15 minutes on Nuggets. Super Bowl. It was a phenomenal game. I really, really enjoyed watching this game. Obviously, I was going for the Eagles because I as a Broncos fan, I got to do my duty going against the Chiefs. But man, the Chiefs were just. I made a TikTok about it, and a lot of people were like, "Oh, you can't put the Super Bowl up to one call." And in the moment, I was like the same thing. It's like, "Oh man, you can't have the Super Bowl come down to one play like that, and have a penalty decided." And it's like Kansas City just outplayed Philadelphia. They just did. Philadelphia dominated Kansas City in that first half. I really do, because there was one fumble that was returned for a touchdown. The Hurts fumble and Nick Bolton returned for a touchdown. If that play doesn't happen, there's a serious chance that Philadelphia is up like 27-7 after the first half, and that game is done. But that one play really that was the play that cost Philly, because Hurts just let go of the ball. It wasn't even like Bolton forced a fumble; he just let go of it. But that penalty was not the reason that Philadelphia lost. That was not the biggest reason. The biggest reason was that Philadelphia could not stop at all the Kansas City offense in the second half. And that's a testament to how good of a coach Andy Reid is. It's a testament to how good of a coach Eric Bieniemy is. It's a testament to how good of a quarterback and how good of a player Patrick Mahomes is, especially with his sprained ankle. I thought he was near perfect. He didn't force any throws, didn't turn the ball over. He threw 3 touchdowns. Philadelphia just got outplayed and outcoached in the second half, and that's what it came down to, and that's what people are going to have to live with. I'm not happy that the game ended because of the penalty. Like, the penalty ended the game. The penalty was the reason why Kansas City. It wasn't the reason why Kansas City won, but it's a reason why it was the nail in the coffin. And there was a lot of physicality and contact on both sides all game, and it wasn't really being called. And the fact that something that soft was called, that's my biggest issue. But it's not like that. That's the reason why I'm mad about it. And especially just the referees interjecting themselves in the biggest game of the season with a minute left is annoying. It's really, really annoying. Like, even if it is it's a soft penalty and it's a Super Bowl, you got to just let them play. But it is what it is. And Philadelphia, the way that Kansas City played in the second half, they deserve to win. And it was a masterful game plan by Andy Reid in that second half. I mean, they leaned on the run game so heavily, and it worked out so well. And the amount of motion and the amount of confusion that offense creates against a really good Philly defense was huge. I mean, the 2 touchdowns that they scored, Sky Moore and was it Tony? I think it might have been Tony who scored the go-ahead touchdown, and Sky Moore had another one after Tony had a crazy punt return. Um, those two were the exact same plays, but just on opposite ends of the field. And like you can't have like Philadelphia needs to know better about that. Like the first touchdown fine, but the second one you cannot allow that to happen again. And Casey somehow knew that it was going to happen again. They knew that that motion was going to confuse them. They knew that they were too worried about somebody else and they weren't going to pay attention to Sky Moore and Kadarius Toney out of the backfield or out of the slot because of their motion. So just incredible play calling. I love it. I love that offense is just too good. They're just too good. Patrick Mahomes is just too good. And at the end of the video, I'll try and have a discussion about it, about Mahomes, because I think there's this question, this win brings up the question of where does he rank all time already at 27 years old, and it's a pretty interesting one. So I'll talk about that too. But on the Eagles side of things, I mean, you got to be. I mean, Jalen Hurts played his ass off. I thought he might have even outplayed Patrick Mahomes. The one mistake that he had was the costliest one, was that fumbling the ball for the touchdown. That's the only thing. That's the only mistake that he had, and it was the biggest one. But in terms of quarterback play, I thought he was almost perfect. He was almost perfect. It was phenomenal. The throws he was making, the accuracy he was making them, the fact he didn't really take them. He had like a couple of sacks by technicality, but his pocket maneuvering was great. He didn't force any unnecessary throws. He threw the open guy, went through his progressions perfectly against a good Kansas City. Kansas City's defense is also pretty good, especially in the postseason. Steve Spagnuolo really gets them going for the defense. They're just a big play defense type of team. And the one big play that they had was costly, but outside of that one big play, I thought Jalen Hurts played phenomenal. And I really don't think that this loss was on him. So there's a lot to look forward to for this team. They're still a young team. It's a great defense that still has a lot of potential to grow into. You got guys in the wings. You got Nakobe Dean coming up. Darius Slay is still good. James Bradbury played well. CJ Gardner-Johnson had a phenomenal season after being traded there. They have pieces, and they have pieces to build upon, especially with Jalen Hurts playing like an MVP for most of the season. The one thing, like, I don't think that they need to make any serious improvements outside of maybe some getting better inside linebackers, because that their run defense in that game was pretty tough, and it was pretty apparent that, like, if they're able to get past that first level, then they're going to chew up 6-7 yards because the linebackers couldn't get there in time. But I thought it was a great game. I honestly did. I know that the ending leaves a sour taste in the mouths of a lot of people just because of it being a penalty. But I really hope that penalty doesn't take away from how people historically view this game, because this might have been the best Super Bowl I've seen in my life in terms of haymakers back and forth by each team. The perfection by which Kansas City played in the second half and the perfection by which Philly played in the first half. That comeback drive that Philadelphia had after they go down 35-27 and they convert on a fourth down. They get a huge bomb to Devontae Smith down the sideline. Jalen Hurts getting in on the quarterback sneak, and then the quarterback power, the effort that he had to get in for the 2-point conversion. Huge. I mean, that was phenomenal. There's so many memorable moments from this game. I hope that the most memorable one isn't the penalty. And I know that there's a lot of discussion about it because Goodell said that I think the refs are in a good place. They clearly aren't, but like, what else is he supposed to say? He's not going to say that the refs suck, because then they'll strike and then we'll have another Fail Mary situation. But this was a great game. It was a phenomenal game. And I think that, Kansas City, in retrospect, and you look at it in hindsight, Kansas City and Philadelphia were the two best teams in the NFL all season. And it rarely happens where the two best teams in the NFL all season play each other in the Super Bowl. It rarely ever happens. I mean, last year, Green Bay was the best team in the NFL for most of the season. They go out in the first round. They're one and done, right? Tennessee was the best team in the AFC last season. They were the 1 seed. They go out in the first round. Kansas City was probably the best team in the NFL or in the AFC last season. They go out in the championship game. They don't even make the Super Bowl. So it happens all the time. It happens all the time where the two best teams don't really play each other. But I think that this season it actually did happen. And I'm really happy that the season ended this way. Sucks that it had to be Kansas City, but they're good. They're elite. And Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid are already two. It's one of the greatest pairings in terms of head coach and quarterback of all time. And that's pretty crazy because they've only been together for 5 years. 5 years with him starting. And we'll talk about Mahomes and then I'll end this video. Because Patrick Mahomes, through 5 seasons starting, 2-time Super Bowl champion, 2-time Super Bowl MVP, 2-time regular season MVP, so offensive player of the year, 2-time first team All-Pro, he's second team All-Pro, 5-time Pro Bowler, 2-time touchdown leader, and he was a passing yards leader this season, and he has the most yards all time in a single season, total yards all time in a single season. And he's 27. He just finished his 5th season in the NFL. That's insane. That is ridiculous. And I want to have this conversation with Asher too. So whenever he's ready to get back on, I want to talk with him about this too, because he's a huge Mahomes guy. I am too, but he's an even bigger Aaron Rodgers guy. And I think that this win could potentially put Patrick Mahomes over Aaron Rodgers. I think that you could definitely have that argument. I think that Aaron Rodgers had a phenomenal start to his career, very similar to Patrick Mahomes, mind you, but he didn't get the second ring. He has not made it to the Super Bowl past then. And I know that he's had some, crazy moments. But that Seattle 2014 championship game looms large. Last year's loss looms large. The loss to the Falcons in the championship game looms large. The loss to the Buccaneers at home in 2020 in the championship game looms large. He has had his chances to get to the Super Bowl. And I mean, there's been some crazy part that the Falcons one. I mean, he didn't play great, but he didn't really have a chance. Same with the Niners one in 2019. He didn't really have a chance there. I mean, his defense just completely crapped the bed. But it's you could have the conversation that Mahomes is over Rodgers. You really could. And in terms of talent, I think those are the two most talented quarterbacks of all time. By far the two most talented I've seen. But I know that there's guys like Elway, Dan Marino, Steve Young, guys who I didn't watch. But in terms of talent, in terms of arm talent, in terms of like just pure entertainment value, those guys are by far the top two. But I think, man, 2 MVPs in 5 years, 2 Super Bowls in 5 years, 2 Super Bowl MVPs in 5 years. This season was one of the best seasons ever because you trade away, I didn't even mention this, you trade away Tyreek Hill and you have a better season than last year. How does that make any sense? And I mean, it's just, I don't get how that's possible. I don't understand because it's not like someone else replaced Tyreek Hill's production. Travis Kelce still had an elite season, but there wasn't any single player who also had, 1,000-yard or 1,100-yard season with 10 touchdowns. He just spread it out perfectly. It does not matter who's out there with him. As long as he's got Andy Reid, that offense is deadly. I mean, you let go of the most game-breaking weapon in football and you still throw for 5,100 yards or 5,400 yards and 40+ touchdowns. Like what is that? What is that? That doesn't make any sense. So there's definitely going to be these conversations in the offseason, especially if Aaron Rodgers does retire this season, which it seems like that, there's a strong possibility that it could happen. If Aaron Rodgers retires, there are going to be people saying, where does he rank all time? I wouldn't be surprised if there's a decent amount of people who say, hey, I think Patrick Mahomes all time is better. And that might be recency bias, but he's just that good. I don't know what else to say about it. I mean, we're looking at a guy who's on track to become the greatest quarterback of all time. I'm gonna say it. We're looking at a guy who's gonna on track to be the greatest quarterback of all time. Because I think he, man, it's gonna be tough to beat Brady. Because Brady, that Buccaneers Super Bowl, the fact that he goes to another team without Belichick and still puts up like 5,000 yards, 40 touchdowns, and wins the Super Bowl at like 43 years old. That's very impressive. That is very impressive, and that'll be hard to beat. That'll be really, really hard to beat. But if there's any guy who can do it, I think it's Mahomes. If there's any guy who can do it, I think it's Mahomes. And I think to beat the Brady mark, he won't have to leave the Chiefs, but Andy Reid he won't have Andy Reid for a Super Bowl. He's gonna have to have another coach there because he's gonna have to prove that it's not the coach. Which I don't think is I think they're both, have their perks to both of them, and I think that they complement each other perfectly. But he's going to have to prove that the reason why the offense is because of Patrick Mahomes, not Andy Reid, because that's what Brady did, and that's just the standard that Brady set. But once again, if there's any guy who can do it, I think it's Mahomes. So, yeah, right now my list is probably Brady 1, Peyton Manning 2, Joe Montana 3, and then 4 or 5 is a combination of like 5 players you could probably put. I think you could put Mahomes, Rodgers, Elway, Dan Marino, Brett Favre, Steve Young. Like, there's a ton of guys who you could put. Drew Brees, ton of guys who you could put in those 4 or 5 spots. But I think Patrick Mahomes has well deserved to have his name be mentioned in there, and I think that he's well deserved to have his name be at the forefront of the conversation when you're talking about a top 5 quarterback of all time. He's just ridiculous. He is just insane. So yeah, I think that's gonna be it. 31 minutes. I think that's a good time. I still have to eat dinner, so I think I'm gonna end it there. I'll see about making a video. I'll definitely make a video during the All-Star break about some things that I like. I want to make a video about the Orlando Magic because I really like Orlando. I really like their future. So I do want to make a video about them. I'll make that during All-Star break because I just have a ton of time. And yeah, the fun NFL season. I will say that the Broncos kind of took the joy out of football for me, which really sucks. Because normally for most Super Bowls, I'm really, really excited to watch, regardless of who's playing, because I'm like, yes, yeah, it's a Super Bowl, like it's a huge event. But like watching football this season was such a chore because like, oh God, I gotta watch the Broncos, and I did because I still love them, but it just, oh God, it was so hard to tune in every night. But yeah, watching football is not fun this season, but the Super Bowl was good. Playoffs were great. I really like playoffs. So on to next season we go, on to the Sean Payton saga. We'll see what free agency holds. We'll see how his coaching staff holds. The expectations will be much tempered this season compared to last year. Yeah. But yeah, we will continue to talk about the Broncos, talk about the NFL. We'll go into the free agency because this is shaping up to be a big one. With whatever Aaron Rodgers' decision is, with where Derek Carr goes, what happens to Lamar Jackson. A lot of stuff going to go on. So we'll talk about that. And I will make something over the All-Star break for the Nuggets. I might even do one after. If Asher's ready on Wednesday, we might do one just recapping the first half of the season. So, yeah. It's going to be it for me.